Hi, I'm Sean Carruthers. I'm going to demystify the mode dial on the digital SLRs. Nick Bouton's going to talk Ajax, and Amber MacArthur's going to show us some YouTube copycats. Today on The Lab.
How are you? Good to see you. Welcome. I'm Leo Laporte, and this is The Lab, the show where we explain how technology works. All kinds of technology. Computers, cell phones, camcorders, the internet, MP3 players, Kate Abraham. And we don't explain how Kate works.
You will never understand that.
We have no idea.
No, you step away from that.
You're very lemony today. I love that.
I
love that. It's so bright and cheerful.
Indeed. It's actually in honor of a guest coming up.
Why is that?
We have Amber MacArthur, and she's actually in a very sunny location, hence why I'm looking very sunny today.
That's good. I like it. Amber's going to be talking about YouTube copycats. You know, as soon as YouTube sold for, at the time it was 1.6 billion with a B dollars to Google, everybody else said, oh, there's some money to be made. And about 1,000 YouTube copycats came along. She's going to show us the best of the crop. Fantastic. Also, Nick Bouton is here. Or Bouton. Is it Bouton?
Bouton.
Bouton. Nick Bouton is here. He's going to talk about open source Ajax frameworks.
Okay.
Whatever you say, Nick. No, that'll be fun. Actually, that's for people who are designing websites. It really allows you to take a website and make it very interactive and beautiful. It's what's powering all these new, cool sites. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Sean Carruthers, as you mentioned, is going to, or as he mentioned, is going to talk about your digital SLR and that little mode dial. You know, most people with their cameras, whether they're point and shoots or SLRs, just leave it on automatic, right? But you can do so much once you learn. Yeah, once you learn what those little settings mean. It's a good thing to know. Add it to your toolkit. Of course, the most important part of the show is
the callers.
No, Kate Abraham. No, yes, the callers. And let's get to our first caller of the day.
We are going to Trenton, Ontario, and we have Nikki on the line.
Thank you so much, Kate. Hello, Nikki.
Hello.
How are you? Oh, Nikki, look at you. I love your hair.
Thank you.
That's great. What can we do for you today?
I actually have a question about MP3 players.
Okie dokie.
Would like to know the best MP3 players that are out on the market that are easy to use, have a wide range of features, easy to read and understand and navigate, and the backlight doesn't blind you when you're trying to read the information.
Okay.
And would also like to know about, I've noticed that there are a lot of knockoffs out there right now, like SanDisk, Zune, Nextar, ZView 260.
Right.
Are they really worth anything, or are they just a bunch of hot air?
iPod, as you know, has about 80% of the market, maybe 90% of the market. I mean, it's totally dominant, Apple's product. And there are two really good reasons why iPod is so dominant. One is, of course, it's easy to use. I mean, they solved, you know, before iPod came along, most MP3 players were clunky, difficult to use, and so forth. So iPod solved that. Now, of course, everybody looked at what Apple did and said, and has pretty much followed along. So that advantage is slowly dissipating. The other advantage is the iTunes Music Store. I mean, that really is what makes iPod a success. It's a very easy way to find songs, to buy songs, and to add them to a portable player. And if people find it so easy, that kind of is just a natural thing to do. There is a drawback to buying songs from the iTunes Music Store and the iPod in general, is anything you buy here in the iTunes Music Store can only play on an iPod. I mean, they have a few, now they've expanded to have a few unprotected songs, but most of these songs, most of these video that you buy on the iTunes Music Store is protected and can only play on an iPod. So, you know, up until now, when people like you have called in with that question, what I've said is, well, what music store are you going to use? Because if you're going to use iTunes, you're going to have to buy an iPod. Now, conversely, if you're going to use Pure Tracks or Rhapsody or a lot of the other music stores, the Microsoft Music Store, the Yahoo Music Store, in those cases you have to use a Windows compatible MP3 player, like some of the ones you mentioned, Zune, Sansa, so forth. And you can't use the iTunes Music Store. Now, that's somewhat changing because the record labels are starting to realize that everybody hates copy protection. And so you can go places like Amazon, and they're not in Canada yet, or Australia, but soon you'll be able to go to Amazon, buy songs there that can run on anything with no copy protection. And that's going to be the wave of the future. Yeah, have you spent any money on songs from music stores online yet?
I actually have been getting free coupons and stuff from, usually when you buy Hunt's Pudding Packs, you get free cards where you can download music for 99 cents plus tax and whatever. And I've been doing that, and I actually do find that occasionally the music files do mess up when you download them.
Where are you buying them from? What store do they give you coupons to?
It's called PureTracks.com.
PureTracks, okay. PureTracks will, if it is copy protected, now PureTracks sells many unprotected songs. So this, you know, how is a consumer supposed to know? You only find out when you try to play it on an iPod. But if it is protected and you get it from PureTracks, it won't play on an iPod. So you also said you wanted a lot of features, right? You want things like an FM radio or recording. These things are not in the iPod. Companies like SanDisk with their Sansa have decided the only way they compete with iPod is by offering a lower priced product that has more features. I happen to, the Sansa now is the #2 player on the market today, and I happen to think these are very good players. They're slightly under the cost of an iPod, and they offer more features, like as you said, like the FM radio, like recording, better battery life in some cases, an SD expansion slot so that you can add, you know, these are 8 gig players for $150, but you can add more capacity by putting a micro SD card in there. They make hard drive and flash based players. I think these are very good. I like the Sansas. Another company that I would absolutely recommend is iRiver. They also make really great players at a lower cost with more features than the iPod. Since you do have music from PureTracks, I think you'd probably be smart to go with either an iRiver or a Sansa. Creative Labs makes some great ones too. I really like, I mean, I tell you, in many ways these guys are as good as or better than an iPod. So I really like these choices. If you're going to ask me for a recommendation, I would take a look probably at the iRivers, IRIVER.com, and the Sansas. Let me ask Mr. Sean Carruthers, because I know you have an iPod Touch.
Yes.
I have a lot of iPods. Because I've bought so much stuff on the iTunes Music Store, I'm stuck with an iPod now. I can't move to the other players, but I think you've tried these other players. You like them, right?
I've tried the Sansa View. I've tried a few of the other ones, the Creative Labs player.
They're great.
Most of them are fine. The Sansa players have really come a long way in the last couple of years. And even the Zune, the Zune 2 is like a really good player. So
I'll tell you why I don't recommend the Zune. The new Zune it's a much improved player. It is comparable with all of these other players, but Microsoft, for some screwy reason, doesn't support the copy protection that's used on PureTracks, Yahoo, even its own MSN Music. You can only buy songs from the Zune store. So this copy protection thing is so out of hand and so crazy that it ruins everything. If you're only taking CDs and ripping them or only buying unprotected music, then you can choose any one. If that's the case, I agree. I think the Sansa is a very good choice. The Zune wouldn't be a bad choice. It just makes me nervous because you have to use the Zune store. If you've already bought some iTunes music, the iPod is a great choice. It just doesn't offer all the features. But I tell you what, that's what I use. I love the iPod. I'm very happy with an iPod.
I've tried all the other ones, and I keep coming back to the iPod.
That's why it's got 80% market share, right? Because, you know, it's the best. All right, so there's a long answer, Nikki. I'd say for you, since you've already bought PureTracks music, take a look at the Sansa, take a look at the iRiver, take a look at the Creative Labs. I think the Sansa is probably my favorite now for bang for your buck. Hey, thanks for the call. It's great to talk to you, Nikki.
All right, thank you.
Take care. Coming up, the Bouton. We're going to talk about Ajax, how you can take a web page and make it interactive, fun, make it every bit as good as a desktop application. That's what's happening right now. The lab continues in just a bit. Stay right here. Welcome back to the lab. Leo Laporte here. Nick Bouton is also here. Bouton. Nick Bouton. He is a developer at Open Road Communications, and we're going to talk a little bit about Ajax. And this is something that's really transforming the internet right now. Ajax has allowed people to create websites that are in many ways just like desktop applications, right?
So basically, Ajax is it's an asynchronous JavaScript framework. And
well, that explains everything.
What that means to the layman is that basically there's a lot of less page refreshing going on for you when you're looking at stuff on the internet. So instead of making, you know, Google Maps and how that works, where you really don't have to go out of your browser window, there's no pop-ups, there's no screen changes, right? Everything is all happening within your browser
window. Once you get the map loaded, you can scroll around inside it, you can pick stuff, you can open on Windows. And
Google's one of the biggest companies using Ajax right now for pretty much all of their applications, Gmail, etc.
Is Ajax just kind of a buzzword that, you know, like one of those, you know, Web 2.0 words that people use, or is there really such a thing as Ajax?
I mean, you can kind of argue both sides of that, I think, but Ajax definitely is a buzzword, and I think that it's garnered a lot of negative reputation because of that term that they've been using. And it kind of implies using XML, because that's what the X in Ajax stands for, is XML. But we really don't have to use XML at all for Ajax. So
most of it's done in JavaScript, right?
Yeah, all of it is done in JavaScript from the client side. So inside your browser, you're using JavaScript to do the communications back with the server. So the trick is that Ajax is happening when you're just looking at a website. There could be postbacks happening to the server, and you have no idea what's going on.
So your browser's talking to the server, getting data ahead of time, so that when you do pop open that window or scroll that map, the data's already there. So it feels like you're not downloading a new page, you're just moving stuff around.
Exactly. So there's way more, it feels more interactive, it's more usable, and there's a lot less flipping around basically going on.
It's challenging for a programmer though, right? I mean, I know programmers, first of all, hate JavaScript because it's different for every browser. There's no kind of standard JavaScript, so it's a tough language to write in.
There is a standard core called ECMAScript that JavaScript is based on, but every browser supports it slightly differently, and they have their own little flavors of things, but they're getting better. Like IE 7 and now IE 8 coming out, it's in beta right now. And Firefox 2 and Firefox 3 is in beta. Those are all getting kind of closer and closer to a central standard.
That would be nice.
So I'm hoping that the next year we can start writing some code that works cross-browser without a hitch.
There is some hope, though, for Ajax programmers. There are libraries that have been pre-written that handle all of that stuff, so that the Ajax programmer or the website developer can work at a higher level and not worry about these finicky details.
Right. There was a time 2-3 years ago when Ajax started coming out that there wasn't a whole lot of this available, and now there's all these different frameworks and libraries you can use that totally simplify your life. You don't have to write all of the nitty-gritty detailed code that you would have had to write at the beginning of when people started using this stuff.
I know one of these is the Yahoo user interface library, which Yahoo's very, I think, generously open sourced and made available. We've talked a little bit about that in the past.
Yeah, I discussed the advantages of using the YUI framework and the different plugins that come with that one. There's actually 2 or 3 others that are really big right now, and there's a couple of smaller, lower scale frameworks that are out there.
Can we see some of this at work?
Sure. Well, I'll do a quick YUI drag and drop sample. So each of these libraries has a lot of core features, and the YUI is pretty good in that they're really well documented.
See, this doesn't look like a web page. This looks like an application. The kind of stuff you do in an application.
It totally looks like a desktop app, and it lets you do a lot of stuff.
But we are seeing more of that in websites. Google IG, NetVibes, a lot of these home pages allow you to drag and drop stuff just like that, right?
And so YUI provides drag and drop is just one component out of dozens that the YUI has.
I can see on the right, you can see
there's just a big long list there.
A ton of stuff, yeah.
So the YUI it's probably the biggest one right now. It's definitely the most well supported and well documented. Lots of big sites like LinkedIn, Slashdot, Target, they're all using the YUI on their sites right now to do a lot of the interactive stuff.
And you don't pay Yahoo to do this.
No, it's all free. All these are free. So
what else is out there?
Scriptaculous.
This is one actually I use on my website. I don't develop it, but my developer has put a Scriptaculous module in there that gives us some nice Java or Ajax capabilities. I really like it. Yeah.
Scriptaculous is very lightweight. It's pretty small and it's packed in. If you use Ruby on Rails, for example, Scriptaculous kind of ships with that. So they're not necessarily tied to it. But if you're using Rails, I would totally recommend going with JavaScript.
And again, the advantage is it's much easier for the programmer. They just make some library calls instead of having to hand code all of this functionality.
And they have a lot of really cool little I'll even put
Do
it
they call them widgets? What do they call them?
I guess we call them controls. They're
Controls.
components.
Okay.
They're widgets. There's all sorts of different names for the same thing, right? So this one's taking a little while to come up here.
So it's going to look.
There you go. So I can see I'm auto-completing on this text box. I've typed in LE, and it's giving me names that have LE in it. And if I go to LEO, then you see it's kind of narrowing down the list. So I never had to leave this page, but it's actually making posts in the server and getting back data.
A post is a request to a server saying, give me this data, and it sends it back, but it does it behind the scenes so you don't see it.
Right. So it's totally out of your hands, and there's nothing required on the user side.
So that's Scriptaculous.
And Scriptaculous is probably one of the more popular ones too.
Free also. All of these are free. Open source.
Actually, X is a different subject. X is free for non-commercial use. However, there is a license fee if you want to use it on a commercial environment.
Okay.
So X is pretty cool, though.
EXT, it's called.
EXT.js. And as you can see, they've got a real web desktop type feel to their stuff. All of these are, like, this entire desktop is built completely from X. It's all running on JavaScript, but it's just like, it's a really slick library. And they've got some really cool little tools going on here. So all
if you've ever used something like ProtoPage or NetVibes, that's what this looks like. And boy, it does. Look, that looks like Windows now.
Yeah,
we've got a menu, we've got a bogus window.
That's your bogus window. You can do the transparencies on the drag and drop there.
Is this all come about because computers are faster now? People are on broadband. What is driving this?
Well, that's one of the tricks there is that people's PCs are getting a lot faster, and since JavaScript is completely interpreted on the client side,
when you do that, it's your computer, it's your laptop here that's doing all the work.
Your browser's doing all the work, and your computer's running what's going on.
It's capable of that though now.
Yeah. So a lot of the fancy UI and the fancy flashy stuff going on is not. There's no server requirements for that.
Right.
It's not causing load on the web server.
Right.
It's all on your machine. So the faster your machine, the better your experience is going to be for this.
And the advantage is now we can write web pages that act like desktop applications.
Totally.
I mean, you're seeing now complete full office suites. All kinds of cool stuff that's really running on your computer via the internet. It's very cool.
There are a few little drawbacks, and I think the main one people notice the most is that you can't necessarily bookmark pages easily when you're using an Ajax app. If you're sitting in Google Maps and you want to bookmark a page, you have to click the link to this page.
They have to do it themselves programmatically. They
and then generate a link for you. So it makes things a little tougher there. But I think the main thing is when you're building these apps is to try and stick with a single platform.
Pick one. Pick EXT or Scriptaculous, or we didn't show Prototype, but that's another common one. Yahoo Interface Library. Pick one.
Exactly.
And implement that one.
Exactly. If you start switching and mucking around with multiple interfaces, it's not just that. You'll totally be sorry because things will conflict.
Right.
But not just that. You're just going to have so much script coming in. Your pages are going to be huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
which is the smallest of these?
I think Scriptaculous is probably the smallest.
Pretty lightweight.
Yahoo would be the most full-featured.
Right.
So
thank you, Nick. Nick Bouton, he's a software developer, uses this stuff all the time at Open Road Communications. You can visit his website, nickbouton.com. There it is right there. So thank you very much for filling us in on that. Now, it's time to take a close-up look at something you might find around the lab every day. Well, you can tell what that is. It's, a light in a thing. What does it belong to? Tell you what, we'll zoom out and find out when the lab continues. You stay right here. All right, there's a close-up of something you commonly find around the lab, but it looks like a Lego with an LED in it. I don't know. What is it? Let's zoom out. Well, how am I supposed to know what a Leviton electronic tester is? He's just being mean now. Sean Carruthers just being mean with his macro lens. What are you laughing at?
I have no idea what that was. Was that a Christmas light?
No idea. Let's get another caller on the air.
Fantastic. We're going to Two Hills, Alberta, and I'd like you to meet Richard.
Hello, Richard.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well. How are you?
Cold.
I shouldn't laugh. How cold is it?
Right now it's minus 27.
Wow. And I thought it was bad here because it was a little slushy. Is the snow piled up outside the window?
Oh, yeah, we got lots of snow this year.
Yeah, that's life, right?
Yep.
That's life. So what can I do for you?
Basically, I've been fooling around with many Linux distros for the last couple of years, and I had used Ubuntu and Linspire for a while. Mm-hmm. But I've got this newer computer now, and I'd like to find out what you think is the best Linux distro, because I'm going to do a dual boot, I think.
Let me talk first about what Linux is, because this will help you understand my answer. Linux is a free operating system. It's called open source, which means that anybody can look at the underlying programming code, modify it, distribute it themselves with, you know, some license agreements attached to it. You have to give credit and so forth. It was created by a graduate student, a Finnish graduate student in 1991, I think it was. Linus Torvalds is his name. Linus. And it was kind of based on Minix, which was kind of based on Unix, so it's Linus's Minix or Linux. But what did Linus really write? Not much. He wrote the kernel, which is the smallest part of the operating system. It's kind of the core of the operating system. And when you get a Linux distribution, what you're really getting is Linus's kernel, which is only, you know, a few megabytes in size. And on top of that, hundreds of megabytes of free software. Most of it comes from the GNU project, the Free Software Foundation's project to rewrite all of the commercial Linux software in a free open source form. In fact, the guy behind GNU, Richard Stallman, kind of asks people to call it GNU Linux, not just Linux. And he has some merit to his argument. Nobody does it, but there's a good point in that, which is it's Linux plus you know, all of these other programs written by so many other programmers on top of it. When somebody creates a version of Linux, they're starting with this kernel, always the same, and putting on top of it their choice of applications. And the thing that really makes one distribution different from the other mostly is the installer that installs it, and almost always they have some way of installing new software, some form, and those vary from distribution to distribution. That's the only difference, really, is the installer and the way you add or install new software. So there isn't and I guess what packages are bundled in. So there isn't a huge difference between Linuxes. Now, there's a great site I recommend. This is called Distro Watch at distrowatch.com. A distro or distribution is what we call these different flavors of Linux. And you can see here the page hit ranking, the most popular. You can see here the different disks. You can see reviews. And there are literally hundreds of different Linux distributions. If I scroll through, it goes on and on and on. And again, you know, different philosophies behind them, different ways you install them and so forth. But essentially, there's not that much difference. You use one, you're going to be comfortable. You probably had that experience. Linspire was designed to be very comfortable for Windows users. Ubuntu is probably the most popular form of Linux right now. Did you see a whole lot of difference, Richard, between the two?
Yeah, actually, when I was using Linspire, it was on my other computer. I actually liked it a lot, but I haven't got the new one, the 6.0, and I've tried downloading FreeSpire 3-4 times, and I booted up. There's obviously a problem with the sound card or some of my hardware.
Yeah, that's one area where you do have some differences is in hardware support. And you know, every distribution tries to bundle in the appropriate hardware support. Because Linspire was really designed around Windows, and by the way, Linspire was intended originally to be a commercial distribution to be sold. Michael Rogers, the guy who founded MP3.com, funded this project, and their idea was to make an open source operating system that was comfortable for Windows users, had all the drivers that you would want, and it was very easy to install additional software. But you paid for some of these features. They've kind of changed that around from time to time. I'm not sure what the current status. That's why there's a FreeSpire, which is designed to be kind of like Linspire but free. Another one that a lot of people who use Windows talk about is called PC Linux OS. I don't know if you've tried that. It's not a super popular form, but unless you look at how much it's being talked about, and it's being talked about an awful lot. So this would be a good one to take a look at. I pretty much come down on, are you going to do a dual boot or run Linux only?
I'm going to do a dual boot for a while because I do a lot of movies and burning and downloading.
I think that's actually a great idea. The nice thing about dual booting is you can run both, right? You can run Linux, and when you need Windows, you've got Windows, and I think for a lot of people that's a good way to go. If I were doing a dual boot, I'd probably run Ubuntu. Did you not like Ubuntu?
I did. My problem is, and now I'm finding out with this latest distro of theirs, my Creative Sound Blaster XFI, it's obviously not supporting it, or is that SUSE? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and that's really where people run into issues is in particular hardware. Is it a laptop or a desktop?
desktop.
Yeah, I would go to DistroWatch, look at the distros. They'll talk about hardware issues, which ones it works with. There's a great site for laptop Linux users, because with laptops there are often hardware issues, called Linux on Laptops, and that gives you information. And it actually might. It's linux-laptop.net. Might be a good place to go, even for your desktop, just to see what hardware support. What this does is it starts with a make, and then recommends which Linux is best for that make. Yeah. The reason I recommend Ubuntu, and actually for Windows users, I often recommend Kubuntu, which is Ubuntu with the KDE desktop. It looks most like Windows, makes people feel very comfortable with Windows, and the best thing is, and all of these will do a boot to CD, but once you install it, it will say, oh, you have Windows, do you want me to do a dual boot? And it kind of automatically handles that. But you're right, your issue, and the only question you should be asking now, Richard, is which Linux is going to work with this sound card? And for that, you're going to have to do some more research. Type Linux, the brand of the sound card, see who's supporting it. Maybe there's some drivers you can add to an existing version that'll make it work. Sound card support has often been difficult in the past, although there is a really good group trying to make it possible for all sound cards to work with Linux. It's the OSS, it's the Open Source Sound, or Open Sound System, that's what it is, at opensource.com, or opensound.com. And they're really doing their best to make Linux work with these older Creative Labs cards, things like that. But I think you're on the right track, Richard. It's one of those things. You use Linux, you're going to kind of have to be a little bit of a hobbyist. There's a lot of tweaking involved. Hey, guess who's coming up in just a little bit? Amber MacArthur from the beach. She's going to show us how a number of companies have attempted to cash in on YouTube's success by making clones. There are some better than others. We'll talk about the best when the lab continues. But first, it's time to take our quick quiz question of the day. When did the Walkman first go on sale? I bought it, $250. It was hugely expensive. It was a cassette player. Was it 79, 80, 81, or 2008? I'll never forget going in and laying down a whole bunch of money for my first Walkman. What year was that? Do you remember? We'll talk about it a little later on when the lab continues. Welcome back to the lab. Leo Laporte here, and guess who's there? She's in beautiful Florida. Amber MacArthur, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, Amber.
Hey, Leo. How are you doing?
I'm jealous is how I'm doing. Look at you. You're out on the beach. Wow.
Life is good. Life is good.
You always said you used to, when we were doing the show in Toronto, you'd go right around this time of year, every year, down to Florida, and I had no idea this is what you meant.
I know. I feel like, I tried to just initially set this video call up inside so no one would see where I was, and now I'm totally busted.
Now we're all jealous.
I know. It's not good.
It looks gorgeous, and so do you. I notice you've gone brown. I have to mention that because everybody's going to be saying, hey, what happened to the blonde?
It's kind of my winter look. I'll probably go back to blonde at one point.
No.
The funny thing is, someone posted on my blog where they said that, hey, you know what, just because you dyed your hair brown doesn't mean that you can automatically become this intelligent brunette. And I'm thinking, I've always been brunette. The blonde was
You've always been intelligent. What are you talking about? It's not the hair color has anything to do with it. One of the smartest people I know, Amber. All right, now let's talk about, you discovered YouTube as far as I'm concerned. I remember it was about 2 years ago that you came on to Call for Help and you showed us this fledgling site that made it very easy to upload video to. About a year later, they sold it to Google for $1.6 billion.
I know. I wish I got in touch with them when I did that review, but it was in 2005, and Chad, who is one of Steve Chen, who is one of the founders, he actually put the video up from Call for Help when we reviewed it. He put it onto his YouTube account, and I think it was the first time that YouTube was reviewed on a TV show, and now you see YouTube everywhere. So as you can imagine, from that point till now, there are so many sites that have kind of copied a little bit of what YouTube has done.
Well, why not? You see the big payday like that, you say, hey, let me get some of that. So let's talk. I have never heard of any of these YouTube copycats. I mean, I'm familiar with Blip.tv and Vidler and Rever, and there's a lot of sites where you can upload video now, but these all have something a little bit different going on.
Yeah, these are a little bit different, and I think, the idea here is that they're very niche, they're very specific. So the first one that we're going to look at is for gamers. I think you have this one up right now.
Yep. I do.
And this is a place where you can upload your video game play. Now, I'm not a huge gamer, but I know you are. And if you were playing a game like World of Warcraft, you could go and you could upload what you're playing and upload all of that video to the site. Or you can watch videos of other people playing games as well.
So these aren't really, in any case, videos of humans. These are always from gameplay.
Exactly. So the idea is it's all gameplay. So if you're totally into one game, a really popular game, and you like to see what other people are doing on that game, you can go to the site and you can go through all the different categories. And as you can see on the site, they literally have so many games that have already been included into different sections of the website. So you can just watch gameplay videos over and over and over again.
So you could say, if I only want to see Warcraft games, you can choose that. They have these are all the different games here. Let's watch people play Guitar Hero. Oh, there's nothing like it. And so it's kind of neat. I mean, I have to say, these are among the most popular category of games on YouTube anyway. So why not have a site that's just about game videos? This is
exactly. And another thing that they have on that site as well is they have an application, it's Windows only, that you can download, so it will help you more easily record your gameplay. So if you're playing a specific game, it actually taps into what type of game you're playing and it allows you to record in a really simple manner. So they've gone that kind of extra distance, and they've obviously targeted a gamer audience and people who are pretty diehard about the gaming world.
Yeah, no kidding. What kind of video? They have Machinima too, which is a kind of neat form of gaming video where you actually take the gaming video and you create stories out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can even take some of the gaming videos that you've recorded and you can turn them into Machinima. So they teach you a little bit about how to do that as well. Oh, that's really
neat. Are we seeing the kind of traffic that we saw on YouTube, or are games getting hundreds of thousands of views, or is it too new for that?
I think it's too new for that. And,
yeah.
It's going to be a while before there's going to be a YouTube-like site that gets that kind of traffic. And I think what people want is they wanted to get a little bit of a piece of the action as far as getting people who are interested in looking at videos online. So they've segmented what they're trying to do into these specific categories like gaming. The next one we're going to look at is for scientists, which might interest you a little bit. This is Sci-V.
Sci-V. This is also in beta. Everything's in beta.
It really bugs me because I think people put these beta labels on everything and they think it protects them from criticism from anyone.
Right.
It's just not the case. But anyway, most of these sites have launched fairly recently. As for Sci-V, it's a site that's specifically for scientists. So it's made by scientists and it's built for scientists.
It's pretty hardcore.
It's really hardcore. I actually really like this site. If you're into learning, and, Leo, we were talking a while ago about that website. I think it's called bigthink.com.
Yeah.
And if you're into learning and you want to put your research materials online, I think a lot of these communities are great places for people to go and to gather knowledge that they're not going to see in any type of mainstream media.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and these are submitted by well-known scientific institutions. Some of this stuff is very well done. Some of it is just a professor talking about what they're interested in, but it's really, this is from the Scripps Institute of Oceanography, and is very professionally produced video. It's great that you can go here and find this. In fact, I'm thinking for students, this would be a huge resource.
It really is. I think there's videos up there from NASA as well. And so the idea is that it can be from professional scientists, but let's say you're a researcher in a far-off corner of the world and no one gets to see your research. Well, here's a perfect avenue to be able to upload your videos to the site and share your research with someone on the other side of the world who might find it fascinating as far as what you've discovered.
I love that. How do you find stuff like this? I mean, where do you go? Is there somewhere you can learn about this stuff?
I go into the loser land of the internet.
You're really good at finding. This is the thing I think we miss most about having you on the show. Okay, I guess it's nice we're having you on the show right now. Is you constantly find these amazing things that nobody's ever heard of. This is really, really cool.
Yeah, that site's really, really cool. And it's funny, in a lot of the descriptions as far as the press from these different websites, the two that I've just mentioned, is a lot of them call them sort of YouTube copycats in the sense that they've sort of borrowed some of the design elements from YouTube to present their videos, because obviously YouTube's done a great job of that, and they've come up with a layout that works for videos.
Well, take a look at TeacherTube. I mean, this could be YouTube.
Yes.
I mean, it looks exactly like YouTube. Is this for teachers?
Yes, this is for teachers, and it was actually developed by a teacher who decided that there should be a place where teachers can go and they can help other teachers as well as give information for students. So this one looks a little too much like YouTube. I think there's going to be a lawsuit in the next few months with this one specifically, but it has been written up and it gets great reviews as well, and so teachers can go on here and share their materials. And I think what a lot of these sites are really doing, Leo, is they're kind of developing communities for people online. So even if you don't necessarily want to upload your own video, it's a place where you can go and you can start a conversation and you can meet other people and you can really share. And so that's what TeacherTube is the one video place where teachers kind of have a video home on the internet.
Well, it's also, because it's for teachers, it's categorized by age group, what level of education it is. What a great resource for teachers to, forget the film strips. Go to TeacherTube and you download some stuff and show this to your kids. Amber, you found 3 very interesting, unusual sites. We're going to put links to all 3 of them in our show notes.
Definitely.
Labwithleo.com. It's so great to see you. Enjoy the beach.
I will.
Enjoy your day. Come back real soon, will you?
I promise, Leo.
Thank you, Amber.
Okay, see you later.
Take care.
Bye.
Don't forget Amber's video podcast, Command N at commandn.tv, and Amber and I talk every Wednesday on our podcast on the Twit Network, Net at Night, in which we talk about websites like this all the time. Coming up in just a little bit, more of your calls, Kate's tip, and Sean's going to demystify your SLR. You stay right here. The lab continues right after this.
6, 5 commercials, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, welcome back to Lab with Leo. I'm Kate Abraham, and now it's time for my tip of the day. Now, think Facebook, but for languages. How are your language skills? Mine are pretty bad. There's a brand new site called friendsabroad.com, which is basically like a social networking site that helps you learn a new language. It's a very cool site to use. Once you actually log in, it's the opportunity there is to actually create like a profile as you would do in Facebook, but talk about what language you speak and what you want to learn. So for instance, if I want to learn French, I could then search through to see who is available, obviously who speaks French, who wants to learn English. And the cool thing is you've got the opportunity to learn the language through the chat feature. You've got email, video conference. It's completely free to join. There's users from over 200 countries speaking 80 languages.
Wow.
And obviously with any of these social networking sites, I must say be careful, don't enter personal information, and obviously be a bit cautious with who you're talking to. But it's a very cool site if you want to learn a whole new language.
What a great idea. And that is the best way to learn a language,
Absolutely.
is to converse with a native speaker.
Yeah, so it's friendsabroad.com.
Is it all just typing, or can you do video calls?
Video chat. Yeah, it's
that's
basically,
really
you
neat.
can do obviously the emails, you can do iChat, also you can do video conferencing.
Oh, that's fun.
But obviously, as I say, just be very careful.
Be careful.
Who you talk to.
Well, I have a 16-year-old daughter who's learning French, but I'm not sure I would send her there unless we could kind of vet the people
Indeed.
ahead of time. What's the site again?
It's called friendsabroad.com.
Friendsabroad.com. I think a great idea. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Do we have another friend abroad?
Yes, we do. Kind of not really abroad, but it's East York, Ontario, and we have John.
That's practically abroad. That's all the way on the other side of the continent. Thank you, Kate. Hello, John.
Hello, Leo. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Welcome to the show. Oh, before
Thanks for having me.
Before John, I get to your question, I just want to mention we were talking to Richard a couple of minutes ago, and Sean found a great site, opensource.creative.com. Creative is now, and a lot of manufacturers are doing this, making drivers for Linux, and so this is the place to go to get support for creative products, sound cards, webcams, and so forth. And so you can get Creative's own approved drivers, which is really, really fantastic. I'm sorry, John, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to finish up that call earlier. So what can I do for you today?
I was wondering if you could recommend any tech magazines that are worth subscribing to.
The scene has really changed, you know, from 5 years ago. And remember, I worked for Ziff Davis. This show was originally started at ZDTV, later Tech TV, which was owned by Ziff Davis, which was the big computer magazine publisher. And they had a dozen titles, probably. But it's shrunk, and the reason for that is not that the tech industry has shrunk, but simply the internet. Magazines found they couldn't keep up with the internet, and more magazines are moving online and doing a very good job, I think. And the problem with a print magazine, besides the fact that it's expensive to buy the ink, the paper, to truck it to a newsstand, is that it can't be as up to date, because the internet can be updated every single day, in fact, often many times a day. That being said, I still have to say, I think, are you talking Windows or Mac?
It doesn't matter. Windows, I'm a Windows user,
okay.
So I guess Windows.
I think PC Mag, which has always been the king of PC magazines, is still the king. Still comes out twice a month, has a lot of content, and they have a very, very good online site as well, where you could supplement that. I know many of the guys, and that's the disclaimer, it was a Ziff Davis magazine. I know many of the guys who work there, but I know them to be the best tech journalists in the business. Honest, forthright, smart, and so I know that the quality of the content you get from PC Magazine is absolutely the best. Having said that, I no longer subscribe to paper magazines. I just go to the website. I shouldn't say that, but frankly, you get most of that. And you know, Ziff Davis, the PC Magazine people also do a site that is completely online called extremetech.com that is kind of their enthusiast site. It's a really excellent site, kind of to compete with the non-tech and others. But between PC Mag and Extreme Tech, I think you're going to keep up with everything that you need to know that's online. Macworld magazine for Mac users is still it's the only Mac well, there are others. There's Mac Addict and Mac Tech, but that's pretty much that's it. The 3 Mac magazines in the U.S. Or in the North America. PC Magazine's good. Do you have any other choices? Is PC World even still around? I don't even know if they are.
It is around. I haven't spent much time looking at any of those. Again, to be honest, I have started subscribing to Mac Life, which I think used to be Mac Addict, as you mentioned.
Oh, they renamed it to Mac Life.
Renamed it, I believe. But
I forgot about that.
That one's pretty good. It's got some good sections for learning about that. But for PC users, not so good.
I think PC Mag is still, it's always been the king. I like reading it. You know, I'll buy it on the newsstands when I'm going to go on a plane flight or whatever, and I think it's still an excellent magazine. I don't think frankly, I don't think there's anything even a close second.
And it's got rants from Dvorak.
What could be wrong with that? As long as Dvorak's on it. So that'd be my recommendation, John. But again, I think most people now are going to the web to get this information because it's just more timely. They can keep it up to date faster, you know. Hey, thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Leo.
All right, you take care. Time to walk across the street. Well, the aisle anyway. And say hi to
the aisle.
Ryan Ewell.
I wish it was a different kind of aisle, a sunny aisle, but it's a nice aisle.
That kind of aisle,
yes.
Yeah, not a grocery aisle.
No, not that one either.
Yeah. So what is your free file today? Your UL's?
We're on Mac, and a while back I showed off a program called Ditto for Windows, which is essentially a clipboard program that you could take a bunch of clippings and store it in one place and choose them. So now we've gone to the Mac. It's called PTH Pasteboard, and so you can copy and paste things. So I've already copied a bunch of things, and over in the
everything there in that is all your stuff on your clipboard?
This stuff that's on my clipboard. So
Wow,
I've got some
look at all that
words.
stuff.
So you can see there's some numbers next to it. So you can press numbers and you'll paste it in, or you can just select it. So I'm in Open Office here. I'm going to say, you know, I'm just selecting things today. Show.
How many different clipboards can you have?
Default is 100. You can have more than 100. You can also do graphics. It doesn't have to be text. You can copy and paste graphics as well. So right here, I've got a little graphic.
I'd pay like 40 or 50 bucks for that.
There you go. So
how much is that?
This is free.
Free? I love that.
PTH Pasteboard.
And where would we find that?
Labwithleo.com, free files, Jules. They're all there, all of them. You don't find them anywhere else.
170 fabulous free files and tips and tricks, and that's just part of the website. Thank you, Ryan.
You're welcome.
UL's Jewels. We're going to take a break. Come back in just a little bit with Sean Carruthers. You know that dial on the top of your camera? You can use that to get better pictures. Ooh, we're going to funk it. But before we do that, time for a quick quiz question of the day. When did the first Walkman go on sale? Was it 79, 80, 81, 2008? What do you think? Tell you what, we'll tell you when we come back right after this. Welcome back to the lab. Before the break, we asked you when Sony sold its first Walkman. It was a cassette player at the time, and gosh, I think 1979, was it that long ago?
Pretty good installing until the
Yeah, that's my new technique. Well, 79, 80, 81, it was all, I knew it was somewhere in there. I remember very vividly going to Macy's of all places and charging it because it was really expensive. It was a couple $100
The size of a brick, too.
Yeah, but it was great because it was the first cassette recorder you could attach to your belt. And then it had headphones and you could walk around. It was amazing. What a revolution. Sean Carruthers is here. As you know, I'm sure he's a great photographer, takes a lot of pictures around the lab, posts them on his Flickr account, Global Hermit. He also does our What the Tech thing. And, you know, lately he's been playing with different cameras. You were playing with the E-Volt for a while from Olympus. I know you just bought a Canon Rebel.
I did.
You like it, too. I know.
like it a lot.
And when you use a digital SLR, actually this is somewhat true on even some of the point and shoots, the higher end point and shoots, you have this dial right here. Now, most people just leave it in the program mode. That's what that green mode is automatic, actually. And then there's a P for program. The camera does all the work, but there are other ways to go, aren't there?
There are definitely ways to go. So a lot of these new digital SLR cameras will have a bunch of different scene modes like macro and portrait
even
mode.
This does, yeah.
And that's really good for people that don't want to think about it, but for people that really want to dig into what a digital SLR can really do and take control over those things more,
Get to know
those modes. So there's 4 main modes that are on cameras that are sort of a holdback from the old film school days. And there's the P mode, which is program, which sort of takes control over aperture and your shuttle.
It does almost everything automatically.
It does almost everything automatically. You can do some tweaks. There's the A, which is aperture priority mode. Now the aperture is the opening in your lens, and you can adjust how wide or how narrow it is for different effects. On this one it's T, but on many others it's S, and that's shutter priority mode. So you can adjust how fast your shutter fires. So you can either leave it open for a long time or just very instantaneously.
And then, of course, there's fully manual mode on many of these cameras in M, where you're in charge of everything, including focusing and light and everything.
Right. So the key is with aperture priority mode, you tell it what the aperture is, and it'll figure out what the shutter should be to adjust. In shutter mode, it'll figure out what the aperture is.
Okay.
So you only.
The idea is we have to get a certain amount of light in there to have it be properly exposed. And there's two ways to change the amount of light that goes to a picture. You can either open and close the shutter faster or slower. Of course, slower means more light comes in. Faster means less light. Or you can open and close the iris, the aperture. A wider open iris means more light. So you would open the iris, lower the shutter speed. More light coming in here means a faster shutter speed, or close the aperture and you take more time. So why would you want to mess with those?
Well, there's other effects that are involved in that. So you think, well, those seem to do the same thing, but it's not quite the same thing.
The exposure is going to be the same either way.
Right. So if you remember, a while back we did a pinhole camera segment here, and when you bring it down to a tiny little point of light.
That's the smallest possible aperture.
Right. Everything becomes in focus at that point if you leave it open long enough.
Right.
So you can actually adjust your depth of field. And I've actually got a bit of a demo here.
Okay.
We took this.
I should mention before we go too much further that aperture is a ratio. So
it is a ratio.
The lower the number, the wider the aperture. I know that's confusing, but that's the way it is. So
we're going to have Ray come in to talk about exactly how that works.
So this is f3.5, which is a fairly narrow aperture, small aperture.
Yeah, in this case it was fairly wide open, and it goes down in this case a little bit longer. So we're going to just shuttle through, and notice the background in this picture. We've got the bears in the front, and they're in focus. And as we shuttle through here, we'll notice the background is going to start to get more and more in focus. Right. While the foreground isn't really changing. So when we get to the end here,
everything's in focus. That's like a pinhole camera.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's why if you want to control that, you would set it to aperture mode, and that way you could open it up or close it depending on how much depth of field you want.
Right. So that's one definite advantage of playing around with your aperture. Now, shutter is a little bit more obvious why you'd want to do that. I think you can do freeze frames basically if your shutter is fast.
If you're taking pictures of horse races, you want a fast shutter speed, or car races.
Right, but there are some cases where it might guess what you want to do, but that's not exactly what you want to do.
Right.
So this is nice and fast, but you might want more of a blurry effect. So
see, that's a high shutter speed, but the water, it looks like you're freezing the water.
Right.
It looks like snow.
So when you go a little bit
further,
further,
at that. Isn't that pretty? It looks more like water.
Right. So this might be great on a waterfall. This is kind of a waterfall, but you can get different effects just by leaving it open. Or if you have
so you put this in shutter priority mode and say what you want your shutter speed to be. You say, I know I'm taking a picture of water, or maybe I want some blur when the car goes by.
Exactly.
You'll use a lower shutter speed because it won't freeze it.
Yeah, your camera might not be smart enough to realize you want a car blur.
The camera does kind of a in-between. It just makes up the answer. That's why controlling it's so important. This works on point and shoots. Many point and shoots now have these settings. It's a very important technique. Professional photographers almost always work in either aperture or shutter. I always work in aperture mode because I want to be able to control the depth of field. I think that's great. But there are times, as you see, where you want to freeze stuff or not. Very nice. He's a good photographer. You ought to see his pictures. Flickr.com/photos/globalhermit. And thank you for all the great pictures you've taken over the years of the lab. We're going to take a break, come back with some final words right after this, maybe some final photos too, as the lab continues. You stay tuned. Sean has also put, I didn't mention this, a lot of his pictures on Flickr.
Yes.
The lab pictures are Lab with Leo. So it's
so it's flickr.com/photos/lab with Leo.
Great stuff. He's been taking pictures now for a long time.
Yeah, there's a record of a year's worth of production there.
Isn't that fun? I love that. Now, we also have a website we want you to go to. There it is.
labwithleo.com.
Yep, and Kate has a blog there, Sean has a blog there. But more importantly, you can go there to ask a question.
Yes, it's a questions page. Submit your question there. We'll give you a call and get you on the show. Any question? No question too big, no question too small.
Yes, or no question too dumb. I really want to say that. I mean,
that's actually true.
No, I know dumb's the wrong word, but don't be afraid to ask a question.
Simple questions are good.
Yeah, if you're thinking it, a lot of other people are, chances are. And we like to answer those questions because we like to answer the most questions. Hey, thanks for being on the show. We really appreciate it. We'll see you soon, okay? Bye-bye.